They say the truth sets you free, but that's a sanitized Hallmark card version of reality. They never tell you about the part before the freedom, the part where the truth acts like a home invader. It doesn't knock politely. It kicks the door off its hinges, shatters the windows, and ransacks every room, leaving your life in a state of unrecognizable ruin. Only then, standing in the wreckage, are you free. My truth, the home invader, was stored on a tiny black flash drive, an insignificant sliver of plastic and metal that held the explosive power to detonate a 6-year relationship, a home, and a future I had foolishly believed was guaranteed. My fiancée, Jenna, the woman I had asked to be my wife under a sky full of kites, the woman whose name was already engraved on wedding invitations, slept with 3 complete strangers during her bachelorette party in Las Vegas. So I vanished. I didn't leave a note. I didn't make a scene. I just became a ghost, disappearing from the life we built without a single word. And what unfolded in the silence I left behind? Well, that's the entire point of this story. Jenna and I were, by all accounts, the perfect Austen couple, the kind you'd see in a lifestyle magazine. We had the storybook beginning, a genuine meet-cute in a city that thrummed with its own unique energy. Our first encounter was at a coffee shop on South Congress, a place that smelled of dark roast and old books, with mismatched velvet chairs and the works of local artists adorning every wall. I saw her from across the room, laughing at something her friend said, and it was like the entire place went into soft focus. She had this light about her, an unforced radiance. I spent 20 minutes inventing a reason to talk to her, and when I finally did, we didn't stop for 4 hours. We talked about our mutual love for cheesy 80s action films, our vastly different family backgrounds, and our shared dream of one day leaving our corporate jobs to travel the world. It was easy. It was real. I went home that night and told my roommate, Alex, "I think I just met the woman I'm going to marry." He laughed, but I was dead serious. That feeling, that profound certainty, it never wavered. Not once. 6 months later, we were wrestling with IKEA instructions on the floor of a small bungalow we'd rented in the Zilker neighborhood. We painted the living room a calming sage green, arguing playfully over every brushstroke. We adopted a lanky, goofy golden retriever and named him Bowie, after our shared musical hero. I remember our first week in that house. We were too broke to buy a proper dining table, so we ate pizza on the floor, using unpacked boxes as chairs, with Bowie trying to steal the crusts. We were happy, genuinely, deeply happy. We were building a home, not just a house. Her best friend, Chloe, was a permanent fixture in our lives, the designated maid of honor, the keeper of all Jenna's secrets. Chloe was a hurricane of a person, vibrantly funny, fiercely loyal to Jenna, and someone who seemed to run on a volatile fuel of chaos and attention. I remember one time, we had an important brunch with my parents, and Chloe convinced Jenna to stay out with her until 4 a.m. Jenna showed up late, hungover, and smelling of smoke. I was annoyed, but Jenna just gave me that disarming smile and said, "Oh, you know Chloe, she's a bad influence." I let it go. I saw Chloe as a necessary opposite to my own calm nature. I thought Jenna needed that wild streak in her life. I see now that it wasn't a balance. It was a poison, administered in slow, laughing doses. After 5 years, on a bright, windy day at the Zilker Kite Festival, I proposed. I'd spent a month planning it, working with a custom kite maker. I attached the simple, elegant ring I'd saved for a year to buy to the kite's string. When she reeled it in, her hands following the string, her eyes squinted in confusion, then widened in disbelief. She sank to her knees in the grass and just sobbed, a raw, emotional sound of pure joy as she screamed, Yes. People around us, strangers, stopped to clap and cheer. It was our perfect public moment, a testament to the life we were so proud of. The following year was a blur of happy, stressful wedding planning. The arguments were trivial, the kind of problems you want to have. Red velvet cake versus chocolate fudge, a live band versus a DJ. We spent an entire weekend driving through the winding roads of the Texas Hill Country, visiting one rustic, beautiful venue after another before we found it. A breathtaking oasis overlooking the serene waters of Lake Travis. Standing on that cliffside with her, I could picture it all. Our friends and family, the lights strung through the trees, her walking towards me. I never once questioned the integrity of what we were building. I thought our foundation was bedrock. It was a fatal miscalculation. It was nothing but sand, and a tsunami was on its way. The bachelorette party was Chloe's magnum opus, a 3-day blitz in Las Vegas. "What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas," she'd chanted, raising a glass to Jenna at their little send-off dinner. Jenna was giddy with excitement. "It's my last ride, babe," she'd said, kissing me goodbye at the airport. "Gotta go out with a bang." I laughed and told her to have fun, to be safe. I trusted her implicitly. My trust was absolute because my love was absolute. I trusted the woman who held my hand through a painful family funeral. I trusted the woman who knew my deepest insecurities and never once used them against me. That level of trust, I learned, isn't a strength. It's a vulnerability waiting to be exploited. Have you ever given someone that kind of absolute trust, only to have them treat it like it was worthless? It's a violation that leaves a scar no one else can see. It changes the way you look at everyone, forever. If you've been there, you know exactly the kind of hollowed-out feeling I'm talking about. The weekend she was gone was quiet. I painted the trim in the guest room, mowed the lawn, got my wedding suit perfectly tailored. I was literally and figuratively preparing our future, polishing the edges of the life we were about to formally begin. She was in Vegas, taking a sledgehammer to it. She returned on a Sunday evening, looking tired but electric, her skin sun-kissed. She regaled me with heavily edited stories of pool parties, Cirque du Soleil, and extravagant dinners. She talked about how much fun she had, but how she couldn't wait to just be home with me and Bowie. She was wearing a tacky bride-to-be t-shirt, and as she talked about our honeymoon, she traced the names of the Italian cities we planned to visit on my arm. The performance was flawless, the deception utterly profound. The next afternoon, I came home from work early. A major project had launched successfully, and my boss sent the team home to celebrate. I decided I'd surprise Jenna by cooking her favorite meal, pan-seared scallops with risotto. As I walked up the stone path to our front door, the door we'd painted blue together, I saw it. A small, offensively glittery gift bag was propped against it. It was from Chloe. The tag was written in a loopy silver script that I recognized instantly. It read, "To the Queen of Vegas, you didn't just own the town, you burned it down. So proud of the chaos. Love, Chloe." My stomach clenched. It wasn't a gentle flutter. It was a hard, cold knot of pure dread. I carried the bag inside as if it were radioactive, setting it down on our kitchen's granite countertop. The silence in the house was suddenly deafening. I just stared at the bag. My mind was a frantic battleground of denial versus a primal, gut-level certainty that my life was about to change. "It's nothing. Chloe is just being dramatic and over the top, as always." But another voice, a colder, quieter one, whispered, "You know what this is. Look inside." That quiet voice won. I told myself it was my right. It was my house. It was a package celebrating the woman I was about to marry. I ripped the tissue paper out. Inside was the standard tacky Bachelorette paraphernalia, a cheap plastic tiara that said, "Future Mrs. Miller," a pink feather boa shedding feathers everywhere, a shot glass emblazoned with a phallic symbol. And then, at the bottom, nestled in a bed of star-shaped confetti, were two items that did not belong. The first was a pair of dark gray men's boxer briefs, Calvin Klein. Not my brand, not my size, and they had been worn. A sickly, sweet smell of cologne and sweat emanated from them. My vision tunneled. The room felt like it was tilting on its axis. I physically recoiled, backing away from the counter. A gag gift. It has to be a gag gift. A twisted, horrible joke. My mind scrambled, desperately trying to build a wall of rationalizations. Then I saw the second item, a simple black Kingston flash drive. No label, no cute ribbon, just a sterile piece of technology, a digital Pandora's box. I don't know what force compelled me to walk to my office, to slide that drive into my laptop's USB port. It wasn't curiosity anymore. It was a grim, resigned need for confirmation, a need to witness the execution of my own happiness, so there would be no doubt, no turning back. A folder appeared on the screen. It was titled, Vegas Judgment Free Zone. My hand trembled as I clicked it open. There was one video file inside named The Legend of Jenna MP4. I took a deep breath and pressed play. The video crackled to life, the audio tinny and distorted. The first scene was predictable. Jenna, Chloe, and two other friends crammed into a VIP booth in a club that pulsed with neon lights and thumping bass. They were doing shots of tequila, laughing so hard Jenna snorted. She looked beautiful, dangerously alive. But her eyes, they had a wild, manic gleam I'd never seen before. It wasn't joy. It was abandon. The next clip, a male review. Jenna had been pulled on stage. I watched, my jaw tight, as a shirtless man with oiled muscles danced around her. It was cringy, but I told myself to breathe. This is what happens at these things. But then she reached out, grabbed the dancer by the back of his head, and pulled him into a kiss so deep and ravenous it looked like she was trying to devour him. The crowd roared. Chloe's voice from behind the camera screamed, "Yes, Queen! Fuck him up!" My blood ran cold. I paused the video, my own reflection staring back at me from the dark screen. A pale, stunned ghost. I should have stopped there. I should have thrown the laptop through the window. But I was a passenger in a car crash, unable to look away. I pressed play again. The camera followed a giggling Jenna as she led the dancer off stage, down a dimly lit corridor, toward a door marked Private. The clip ended abruptly. The next one opened in a different location, a swanky, deserted hotel lounge. Jenna was sprawled on a velvet couch, her shoes kicked off. But now she was flanked by two new men, handsome in that generic, sharp-jawed way. A third man sat in a leather armchair across from them. They were all sharing a bottle of Veuve Clicquot, pouring it sloppily. The guy on her right had his arm draped casually around her shoulder, his thumb stroking her bare arm. She leaned into him, her body language open and inviting. She whispered something that made him throw his head back and laugh. Then, the man in the armchair leaned forward and, without a word, kissed her. It wasn't a drunken peck. It was slow and intentional. And she didn't just allow it. She participated, her hand moving to his chest. Before that kiss was even over, the man on her other side leaned in, tilting her head to kiss him as well. She turned from one to the other, a small, triumphant smile on her face. Chloe's shaky camera zoomed in, and her awestruck whisper was perfectly clear on the audio. "Holy shit, Jenna. You're my hero." The final clip was the shortest and the most damning. It was grainy, filmed from down a long hotel hallway. It showed Jenna, fumbling with a key card, finally opening a hotel room door. She turned back, a wide, reckless grin on her face, and waved the three men from the lounge forward. They followed her in like hyenas following a lioness. The door clicked shut, and the video ended, leaving me in the suffocating silence of my office. The world stopped. Time stopped. The only sound was a high-pitched ringing in my ears. The man on the screen, the one staring with dead eyes at a black laptop screen, wasn't me. It couldn't be. My life, my future, my Jenna. It was all a lie. A carefully constructed performance. And I was the star-struck audience of one. She hadn't just made a mistake. She had reveled in a conquest, documented her betrayal, and her own maid of honor had served as the gleeful cinematographer. An hour later, the real Jenna walked through the door, humming a pop song, her keys clattering into the ceramic bowl by the door. She breezed into the office, where I was still sitting, and leaned down to kiss the top of my head. "Hey, babe," she said, her voice bright and oblivious. "Long day? I'm starving." I didn't move. I didn't even flinch. I let her kiss me. I tilted my head back and managed a smile so fake it felt like it might crack my face. "The usual," I said, my own voice sounding distant and foreign. In that single, surreal moment, the grief, the rage, the heartbreak, it all crystallized into a single diamond-hard point of clarity. I wasn't a victim. I wasn't a heartbroken fiancé anymore. I was an architect of what came next. Confrontation was pointless. It would be a messy, emotional opera of tears, denials, and blame-shifting. It was Vegas. Chloe is a bad influence. I was so drunk I barely remember. It didn't mean anything. You're the one I love. I refused to give her the stage for that performance. I refused to let her turn her betrayal into my drama. No, I wanted to respond not with a bang, but with a profound and deafening silence. I wanted to simply cease to exist in her world. That night, lying in the bed we shared, her back rising and falling with the steady rhythm of sleep, was the purest form of torture I have ever known. I stared at the ceiling, the shadows from the streetlights outside dancing like ghouls on the plaster. The video played on an endless, silent loop in my mind. The kiss on the stage, the three men, the closing door. I burned the images into my memory, branding myself with them so that no future apology, no tearful plea could ever soften my resolve. What would you have done? Would you have exploded in a fury of righteous anger, packed a bag and left a furious, tear-stained note on the pillow? Or would you have understood that sometimes the most powerful response, the one that leaves the deepest mark, is absolute silence? The next morning was a study in surreal normalcy. She got up, showered, and came out in her work clothes. She leaned over me, her hair still damp and smelling of her lavender shampoo. "Have a great day, honey. I love you more than anything," she whispered, kissing my forehead. "You too," I said, my voice a perfect imitation of my own. "Love you." The lie felt like swallowing sand. The second her car disappeared down the street, my operation began. Phase 1, the erasure. It wasn't a frantic, emotional packing session. It was a cold, methodical extraction. I took one large duffel bag and a backpack. I laid out a week's worth of clothes on the bed. My laptop, my passport and birth certificate, a hard drive with all my personal files. I walked through the house, our beautiful, sun-drenched home, and it felt like a museum of a dead relationship. The photo of us laughing on a beach in Mexico was just a piece of glossy paper. The ridiculously expensive espresso machine she bought me for my birthday was just an appliance. Every object, once imbued with shared meaning, was now sterile. I decided to leave it all. Let her live in the museum. Let her be haunted by the ghosts of what she'd thrown away. I sat at the kitchen counter where I'd found the gift bag and made my first call. To the wedding venue on Lake Travis. A cheerful coordinator named Brenda answered. "Hi, Brenda, this is Mark Miller," I said, my voice betraying no emotion. "I'm calling to cancel our wedding reservation for October 26th. There was a pause. Oh my, Mark. I'm so terribly sorry. Is everything all right? We can always look at rescheduling." "That won't be necessary," I said, cutting her off. "It's a change of plans, personal reasons." She delicately mentioned the non-refundable $10,000 deposit. "I'm aware," I said. "It's fine. Please just confirm the cancellation via email." Click. I made the same call to the caterer, losing another $5,000. The same call to the photographer, a woman who had gushed about our undeniable chemistry. The same call to the band we'd been so excited about. With every confirmation email that dinged on my phone, I felt a strange sense of lightness. I was systematically dismantling the future. A clean, quiet, and complete demolition. My next stop was our bank. I walked up to the teller and asked to close our joint savings account, the one we had nicknamed the Our Big Future Fund. I withdrew exactly half of the balance in cash. I instructed the teller to mail a cashier's check for the remaining amount to our home address, made out solely to Jenna Miller. My final act in Austin was a visit to my best friend Alex's apartment. He opened the door, and before I could even speak, he knew something was terribly wrong. I didn't have to say much. I just handed him my phone and played the video. He watched it in silence, his expression hardening from confusion to pity, and then to a quiet, simmering rage on my behalf. He didn't offer empty platitudes. He just asked the only question that mattered. "What do you need from me?" "A place to store a few boxes of my most important stuff," I said, "and to be my firewall. Her calls, her family's calls, they're all going to come. I need you to tell them you don't know where I am." He just nodded. "Done." That's a real friend. It's a stark contrast that throws your life into sharp relief, isn't it? It makes you really consider who your Alex is, the one who brings a shovel, no questions asked. And who might be a Chloe, smiling as they film your life's destruction. I left Austin with my phone switched off, heading west on I-10 with no destination in mind, just the endless ribbon of asphalt and the vast, indifferent Texas sky. I felt like a man escaping the scene of a crime, except the victim was my own life. For 2 days, I was a ghost. I stayed in anonymous roadside motels that smelled of stale smoke and bleach, paying in cash. I ate at lonely 24-hour diners, listening to the conversations of strangers, finding a strange comfort in their mundane problems. The grief and rage were constant companions, but out on the open road, they started to feel less like a fire and more like a low, steady hum. On the 3rd day, I found a small, isolated rental cabin nestled in the Sangre de Cristo Mountains of New Mexico. The air was thin and crisp, and the silence was absolute. It was the perfect place for what came next. I sat on the porch, looking out at the jagged peaks, and for the first time in 72 hours, I turned on my phone. It was an explosion, a digital detonation. 58 missed calls from Jenna, 32 from Chloe, a dozen from her mother, Janet. The text messages told the story of her escalating panic. First, mild confusion. "Hey babe, you didn't come home. Everything okay? Call me." Then, rising panic. "Mark, where are you? I'm getting really worried. The venue just called me. They said you canceled. What is happening?" And finally, The dawning, gut-wrenching horror. Chloe told me you saw the bag. Oh God. Mark, please, you have to let me explain. It wasn't what it looked like. I was drunk. It was a mistake. Please, I love you. Don't do this. I read every single message, a cold, clinical satisfaction settling in my chest. Let her panic. Let her squirm in the silence. Let her feel the vertigo of a world that has suddenly dropped out from under her. Phase 2 of my plan was ready. The controlled burn. I had no desire to speak to Jenna, but Chloe? She was a loose end I needed to tie up. I used a burner phone app to send her a single text. We need to talk about the video. Tomorrow, noon. The Starbucks on 5th and Lamar in Austin. Come alone. I drove the long hours back, feeling like a soldier returning to a battlefield. I sat in a corner booth and waited. Chloe swept in, a caricature of style in a bright pink blazer and sunglasses so large they hid half her face. She spotted me, and for a split second, her confident facade cracked. "Mark," she said, sliding into the seat opposite me, her voice attempting a tone of concern. "Thank God. You can't just do this. Jenna is an absolute wreck. She hasn't stopped crying." "Hasn't she?" I replied, my voice devoid of any inflection. I didn't raise it. I just pushed my phone across the table. It was open to a screenshot of the text she'd sent me, the one where she called Jenna a legend. Her face went ashen. The trendy sunglasses couldn't hide the flicker of pure panic in her eyes. "Look," she stammered, "I know it looks bad, but it was just a stupid joke. We were all drunk. It was Vegas. You know how it is." "Stop," I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the coffee shop's ambient noise like a razor. "Stop talking. You don't get to have excuses. You weren't a bystander, Chloe. You were a co-conspirator. You were the director of photography. You cheered her on. You packaged the evidence up with a little bow and left it on my doorstep. I have one question for you. Why?" She stared at me, her mouth opening and closing silently. I don't know," she finally whispered. "I thought it was funny. I didn't think you'd see it." "You didn't think?" I leaned forward, my hands flat on the table. "You helped the woman I love, the woman I was about to commit my life to, cheat on me in the most degrading way possible, and you didn't think?" "No. Let me tell you what you thought. You were jealous. You hated that your party buddy was growing up, that she was building a life that didn't revolve around you and late-night chaos. You wanted to prove she was still yours, and you didn't care if you had to burn my life to the ground to do it." The truth of it hit her. I could see it in the way she flinched. She had nothing, no defense, just the ugly, petty truth laid bare under the fluorescent lights of a Starbucks. "You said Jenna is a wreck," I said, standing up to leave. "Good. That's a start. You can go back to her and tell her that it's over. And as for you, don't worry about me telling people what you did. I have a feeling the truth has a way of getting out." I walked away, leaving her there, a stylish statue of exposed guilt. The final phase was the one I dreaded and savored in equal measure. Her parents. Janet and Henry lived in a sprawling, sterile mansion in a gated community in Dallas. It was a house built on old money and maintained by an obsessive need for the appearance of perfection. They had treated me with polite coolness for years, only truly warming up when I produced a diamond ring. I wasn't a person they loved. I was a suitable acquisition for their perfect daughter. Their pristine family image was everything. I drove to Dallas. When Janet opened the massive, ornate front door, her face was a practiced mask of worried relief. "Mark! Oh, thank God, we've been so worried. Where have you been? Jenna is simply falling apart." Henry, her stoic, imposing husband, appeared in the grand foyer behind her, his arms rigidly crossed. "Son, you vanish off the face of the earth. You have a lot of explaining to do." "With all due respect, sir," I said, stepping past them into the marble entryway. "I'm not the one who has to explain anything, but I am the one who is going to show you the truth. I suggest you both sit down." I led them into their formal living room, a room so perfect it looked like no one had ever actually lived in it. I didn't waste time with words. I handed my phone to Janet, queued up the video, and pressed play. I watched her face, not the screen. I watched it morph from confusion to mild disapproval, then to shocked disbelief, and finally, to a look of pure, gut-churning horror. She made a small, strangled sound in the back of her throat, and her hand flew to her mouth. "No," she whispered. "No, that's not my daughter." Henry, his face a thundercloud, snatched the phone from her trembling hand. His face grew darker and darker, a deep, blotchy red creeping up his neck as he watched. His jaw was clenched so hard I could see the muscles twitching. When the video ended, he didn't look at me. He turned his furious gaze on his wife. "This," he said, his voice a low, terrifying growl, "is the spoiled, entitled brat you raised." The dam of their perfect family image burst. They erupted right there in front of me, a screaming match fueled by years of unspoken resentments and disappointments. All their energy, once focused on the crisis of my disappearance, was now turned inward, on each other and on the daughter who had brought this shame to their door. I didn't need to be there. My work was done. I just stood up. "I'm sorry you had to find out this way," I said, my voice calm in their storm. "The wedding is off. I've taken care of all the financial losses on our end. Everything else is your problem to manage." I walked out of their pristine mansion, leaving them screaming in the ruins. The fallout was swift and total. Alex was my intel source. Her parents, after their spectacular fight, united in their fury and kicked Jenna out of the condo they owned and paid for. Henry, a man whose influence ran deep in the Dallas business community, made a single phone call to the CEO of the marketing firm where she worked. She was fired the next day for corporate restructuring. Chloe, in a masterful act of self-preservation, immediately began telling their mutual friends that Jenna had a drinking problem and had lied to her about what happened in Vegas. She painted herself as a concerned friend and Jenna as an unhinged liar, effectively cutting Jenna off and saving her own social skin. The rest of her so-called friends, smelling the stench of social death, simply vanished. In the space of a single month, Jenna lost her fiancé, her home, her career, her best friend, and the financial and emotional support of her family. She was in a free fall. I heard through Alex that she was bouncing between the couches of a few remaining acquaintances, trying to find a job as a bartender. The voicemails she left on my burner number were a harrowing chronicle of her descent. They started as angry and demanding, then shifted to tearful and pleading, and finally devolved into a kind of broken, pathetic begging. She had nothing and no one. I listened to each message once, then deleted it. I moved to Denver a few months later. I got a new job at a tech startup, rented a bright, airy apartment with a view of the mountains. I started hiking on the weekends, feeling the burn in my lungs and the solid ground beneath my feet. I was rebuilding, piece by piece, on a foundation of my own. The last I heard from a friend of Alex who had run into her was that Jenna was working 2 shifts as a waitress at a chain restaurant off the highway. She looked tired, he'd said, worn out. A ghost of the vibrant, popular woman who had once been the center of every room she entered. And I would be a liar if I told you that news didn't bring me a quiet, somber sense of justice. It wasn't about revenge. It was about balance. It was about consequences. Actions, I now knew with absolute certainty, have an inescapable gravity. Trust, once you shatter it into a million pieces, can never be made whole again. And a perfect life, when it's built on a foundation of deceit, is the most fragile structure of all. It's just a beautiful, elaborate house of cards, waiting for a single, quiet breath of truth to bring it all tumbling down.